All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Recording stopped. Just so you know, the time stops too when the recording stops.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah. All right. Good morning again. All right. So we are going to start with a Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. Will you all please stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Just a few housekeeping items before we start. For board members that are in person, which looks like it's all of us today, there are microphones directly in front of you. When they are red, the mic is not live. Please click on the mic when you want to speak. The mic will turn green and then you may speak. Once you are done, please push the mic again so that it turns red. I don't think we have any board members via Zoom. Is that correct? Okay. And for charters or applicants on the agenda that are participating via Zoom, please stay muted until your item is called. Once your item is called, the board staff will introduce the item and then I will call on you to address the board. At that time, you may unmute yourself and speak. For charters or applicants on the agenda participating in person, once your item is called, board staff will provide a brief introduction and answer any questions board members have for staff. Then I will request that representatives for the charter come up to the podium to address the board. Now, Ashley with the roll call.
President Montier,
Here.
Vice President Close,
Here.
Superintendent Designee Miller, here. Miss Barr,
Here.
Dr. Crockett,
Here.
Miss Foster, Miss Jones,
Here.
Mr. Ruiz,
Here.
Mr. Stratton, Mr. Swanson.
Here.
With that, you have a quorum.
Wonderful. Welcome, everyone. And moving on to agenda item D, Superintendent's report from Ms. Miller.
Good morning. Thank you, President Montier. Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Horn opened his 2025 State of Education speech, praising the actions of a Tucson police officer who arrested an armed suspect making threats on a school campus last week. Since resuming the office in January 2022, Horn's initiatives, task force, and grant commitments have tripled the number of school resource officers in Arizona's schools from 190 to 565, with continued growth projected as even more resources reach our communities in the next school safety grant cycle. Another related initiative to support both safety and academic growth for students in our rural Arizona counties with less access to needed systems has been announced in a new fully funded partnership with mental health care provider Cartwheel to bring students and families in Arizona's rural counties rapid access to mental health support for using telehealth. Cheryl Mango Paget, Superintendent of Schools for the Coconino County Education Services Agency, has said, quote, "With a critical shortage of counselors and social workers in Arizona, particularly in rural and tribal areas, we must embrace innovative solutions to address the growing mental health needs of students and the systemic challenges that contribute to these disparities. Telehealth services like those provided by Cartwheel offer a vital bridge delivering accessible and timely mental health support to schools. By complementing existing resources, these services ensure that students in underserved communities receive the comprehensive care they need to thrive both academically and emotionally," end quote. Services will be offered to all school districts and charter schools in Arizona's 13 rural counties, serving approximately 250 school districts and charter schools and 200,000 students in these counties. The program is voluntary with parental consent required, and the family is involved throughout care. Students will typically receive 2 to 6 months of weekly sessions with longer-term care available. Cartwheel will bill sessions to insurance and accept all insurance plans, including commercial, Medicaid, and TRICARE for military families. Funding for uninsured students is also available through the Cartwheel contract with ADE. Horn said, quote, "Empowering parents is a cornerstone of my administration. This partnership with Cartwheel will help ensure that students in rural areas who wish to speak with counselors can do so with the appropriate permission and supervision of their parents. The program will provide a convenient telehealth option to many families who may have otherwise had difficulty in securing the timely mental health support they deserve for their children," end quote. Interested districts and charter schools can sign up by visiting www.cartwheel.org/Arizona. That concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And on to Ashley for the executive director's report, item E.
President Montier, Vice President Close, and Superintendent Designee Miller, and board members, good morning. As my first item under the director's report, I'd like to introduce you to one of our newest staff members. She is an intern, and she is here to give a brief introduction as well, but her name is Danica Hooks. Danica, if you could unmute yourself, I believe you're virtual.
Hello, would you also like me to show my screen?
Yes, please.
Hi. It is lovely to meet you all, and I appreciate you all letting me do this virtually since I'm not feeling well. My name is Danica Joy Hooks, and I graduated at 19, summa cum laude, from Arizona Christian University, where I received my bachelor's degree majoring in business administration with a minor in project management. Before this internship opportunity, I was a wake surf lesson assistant at Lake Pleasant, where I saw and practiced the importance of encouragement, guidance, safety, and leadership throughout each lesson. I chose this particular internship with the strategic development team with the Arizona Board for Charter Schools because I feel like it aligns well with my skills and passions. In school, I enjoyed working with Canva and Excel, as well as gathering and organizing data. Additionally, education is something I have always held a high importance for, as both of my parents were teachers. After this internship, I hope to continue my project management journey, gaining my CAPM and either remaining in the education industry or performing a similar job at a corporate level or for the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Danica. Moving on, as I do every month for you, I'm giving you an update on the number of amendments that I have approved or President Montier has approved. As of today, since the January meeting, we have had 0 surrender agreements and 0 Arizona online instruction amendments. We've only had 27 amendments. This is very low for us just because of the holidays. But we have been able to do 13 interval reviews since we last talked. And we've done 5 site visits and pop-ins. So a little bit slower than we typically have, but just really because we are ramping up after the holidays and giving schools some time before we come in. And then as my last item, I'll give you an update on legal matters. Regarding an update to legal matters, board staff in collaboration with board counsel are working on finalizing the agreements for West Valley Arts and Technology and Franklin Phonetic Primary School. In November, the board did consider charter schools that had not yet submitted their financial audits. At this time, all of those have submitted their financial audits, and therefore they are not on your agenda today for disciplinary action. And President Montier, that is all that I have to report.
Thank you so much. And call to the public, we have one individual who would like to speak. I would like to call up Miss Lynn Adams.
So I'm actually speaking on the charter application amendments. Would you rather me speak then at the time of that agenda item or now?
No, now is fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I just want to talk a little bit about the changes to that application. First of all, I really do appreciate all of the staff's time and consideration of all the comments that we submitted. I know there were a lot. So I just want to touch on a couple points, and hopefully I can articulate my thoughts that are rolling around in my head clearly here. First of all, we commented that 20 days is a really short amount of time to review and provide comments on 210 pages of a revised application. I understand that there was a lot of national input on the changes, that there was input from national stakeholders and from NACSA, and I think that's really valuable, but I think it's also really valuable to get the feedback of individuals in Arizona about this application. Although, with all due respect, NACSA is a great organization, the National Association of Charter Schools Authorizers, but their interests may not always be aligned with your interests. And so I think it's really important to get that feedback. And like I said, 20 days when school's just starting up and it's been a rocky couple weeks for schools, it's a difficult turnaround time. We did our best. Also, there are some changes that are great to the application, but there are some that I just found to be unnecessary. You already have a difficult application. I sort of view this as you are a nightclub that has a dwindling line of people trying to get in, and you're putting more bouncers in front of the line to keep people out. And I wonder if that's what you really want to be doing here. So one of the changes that I want to focus on, not because it's just because I find it interesting, is you already require charter schools to include a mission statement. You're now going to require them to include a vision statement along with a mission statement. And you're going to be rating and ranking that vision statement. I just wonder, first of all, maybe all of you know what the difference is between a vision statement and a mission statement, but I really wonder why a vision statement is really necessary for a new charter applicant if they already have a mission statement. Are you next going to require a vision board, a mood board that we're all going to put up? It just seems a little woo-woo for me, but maybe that's just me. And I just wonder how you rank that. How do you rate what's a good vision statement versus a mission statement? Is that really necessary in an already big application? The last thing I just want to point out is I think the application has gotten to a point, or I worry that it's gotten to a point, where the people who succeed on it are those applicants who have national support. We wanted to allow charter schools for all educator innovators. And it seems now that it's really difficult for the mom and pops, those without some kind of national organization behind them, to get an application through this board. The last couple cycles, the only applications that have met the criteria are those who have big money behind them. And I don't know that that's where we want to go. Maybe it is where all of you want to go, but I want you to think about that. Again, a year ago, you had one application succeed. This year, you had one application succeed. They're just dwindling. Do you really need to put up more barriers for an already dwindling population in an application that's already pretty rigorous? So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Adams. All right, item G, consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
Already a motion. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ashley?
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Designee Miller,
Aye.
Miss Barr,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Miss Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Ruiz,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
President Monteith.
Aye.
Excuse me, motion passes.
All right, on to item H, charter amendments. Presentation by Rachel.
Good morning. President Monteith, Vice President Close, Superintendent Designee Miller, and board members. Kaizen Education Foundation, DBA Mission Heights Preparatory High School, has submitted an amendment request to increase its enrollment cap from 800 to 1,000 for fiscal year 2026. The increase is to accommodate anticipated growth for both the brick and mortar school and online school operated by the charter holder. The online school, Leona Connected High School, serves an alternative student population and recruits students from across the Leona Group's statewide network of high schools. The charter holder does not meet the staff recommendation criteria because the assessment data for Leona Connected High School is redacted in the public files. Therefore, the charter holder is unable to meet this metric. So to be clear, they neither meet nor don't meet, they just can't meet. Mission Heights Preparatory does perform at or above the average performance of nearby schools in both ELA and math and is an A-rated school. I'm available for any questions you may have.
Board members, questions? Okay, with that, do we have a representative from the charter?
We do. Good morning,
Lovely.
President. Can you hear me all right?
Yes,
Sorry.
ma'am. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, President Montier and members of the board and board staff. My name is Mary Bird, and I am the charter representative for Kaizen Education Foundation. I am here with Eddie Wheeler, our chief of staff, Marcus England, the school leader for Leona Connected High School, Amanda Mace, the school leader for Mission Heights Preparatory High School, as well as Casey Zordani, our director of curriculum and instruction. I just want to thank you all for taking the time today to discuss the proposed increase in the enrollment cap for both Mission Heights Preparatory High School and Leona Connected High School. Both schools operate underneath the same charter. Mission Heights Preparatory High School is an in-person school serving the community of Casa Grande and surrounding areas. It has grown in enrollment over the past 7 years, currently with 559 students enrolled, and we're expected a funding number of 555 this year. Leona Connected High School is an online learning community that serves 276 students. And we've had up to 310 enrolled this year. We anticipate being funded on approximately 200 students this year. We have been open in Leona Connected for 4 years. We educate students out of 123 zip codes, 43 cities, and 3 Native American communities. We have experienced growth in that student population during each of the 4 years we have been in operation. Both schools are expected to keep growing and serve it in their service to the communities. We are here today to discuss the increase in the enrollment cap for both schools. As mentioned, Mission Heights Preparatory School has an A rating. Congratulations, Amanda Mace. Recently, Leona Connected received a letter grade of C. And when we receive that, we of course take an immediate look at our data and start to disaggregate our data and figure out what we need to do to become stronger as a school for our communities. With Leona Connected High School, their school leader, Marcus England, is here. And what we determined was we needed our students to be earning credits and we needed them to be graduating. The school took a look at their data and decided that we needed to limit the number of days students were in classes instead of having like you can take a class and take as long as you need to finish that class. They limited that so students have that sense of urgency, like I need to get moving. In addition, the student employs people that are checking on students on a daily basis to make sure they're in their classes and moving. We anticipate we've already doubled in the number of credits students have earned this year from last year. And we do anticipate that also affecting our graduation rate, which is another point that we were definitely needed to work on. In addition, the school uses iExcel to track reading, math success, and we also have a writing program in place, realizing that when students leave us, they need to be proficient reading, writing, and math. We're pleased to say that the school last year, it was a learning year in how to get online students to participate in iExcel. The school seems to have definitely come up with a system where iExcel now is embedded into each and every class so that students cannot just move through a curriculum with they have to also work on their reading, writing, and math skills. And we're seeing an increase not only in our take rates for iExcel, but also in our growth rates. With that said, if the board has any further questions about either school, I would love to talk about them.
Board, staff, any questions? I don't think we have any questions. That was very well thought out. Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. You got ahead of all of our questions. With that, does anyone want to make a motion?
Okay, I move based on the information contained in the board materials and presented today to approve the request to increase the enrollment cap for the contract of Kaizen Education Foundation DBA Mission Heights Preparatory High School from 800 to 1,000 beginning in FY 2026.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ashley?
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Designee Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Barr,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
No.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Ruiz,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
President Montier.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, board.
All right, item H2, FY 2024 and FY 2025 audits. Presentation by Andrea. Did I get that? Oh, okay. I had somebody look at me, so I wasn't sure if I made it a mistake. Hi, Andrea.
Good morning. Good morning, President Montier, Vice President Close, Superintendent Designee Miller, and board members. Using the annual audits and ADM calculations completed by ADE, staff annually assigns each charter holder a summative financial performance rating of either good standing, adequate standing, or intervention. A charter holder that receives an intervention rating for 2 consecutive years is placed on probation and does not meet the board's financial performance expectations. Staff assigns each on probation charter holder a probation risk level using the charter holder's results based on the 2 most recent audit cycles and the criteria identified in the board's administrative rules. The board has established 3 risk levels, with probation risk level 1 indicating the highest risk. Pursuant to the board's rules, a charter holder assigned to probation risk level 1 is subject to additional oversight, including a consent agreement with the board, charter revocation proceeding, or if applicable, denial of renewal. At its February 2024 meeting, the board approved changes to the financial framework's measures, measure targets, and measure calculations. The February framework is being implemented with staff's review of the fiscal year 2024 audits, which the board is receiving in the current fiscal year. Charter holders' fiscal year 2022 and 2023 audits were reviewed by staff under a prior version of the framework. In March 2024, and for the fiscal year 2023 audit cycle, the board voted to not subject to charter oversight under the board's rules a charter holder assigned to probation risk level 1, based on the financial framework in place for the review of the fiscal year 23 audits, if the charter holder would not be assigned to probation risk level 1 under the February framework. Today, staff is seeking direction from the board on how to proceed with probation risk level 1 charter holders for the fiscal years 2024 and 2025 audit cycles. More specifically, if a charter holder is classified as probation risk level 1 based on its fiscal year 24 or 25 audit due to performance under the previous frameworks in earlier fiscal years, but would not have been classified under the new framework, should the board impose disciplinary action on the charter holder. Should the board decide to proceed in a manner similar to what was done last audit cycle, the board's administrative rules related to the risk levels and submission requirements would continue to be followed, but the board would be exercising its discretion on what action to take after considering the probation risk level 1 charter holder's fiscal year 23 and, if applicable, fiscal year 22 performance using the February framework. It should be noted that to be assigned to probation risk level 1 for the fiscal year 24 audit cycle or fiscal year 25 audit cycle, the charter holder must receive an intervention rating for the audit cycle year. The February framework is being used to review the fiscal year 24 audits and will be used to review the fiscal year 25 audits. I'm available for questions.
Do we have any questions, or do we just kind of need to process that a little bit? Yeah, it's a lot to process. Thank you so much. I know that there was a lot of time and effort put into the February framework. So if I'm understanding correctly, what we're looking at right now is fiscal year 24, 25 audits, and we're looking at whether or not we are going to move forward with any sort of disciplinary action based on the February framework for those years. Is that correct or incorrect? Just so everybody's clear.
Yeah. So what if you approve what is before you today, what will happen is we'll go through our process, we'll review the audits normally, we'll follow the rules normally. For any on probation charter holder that's assigned to risk level 1, before we make that, before we bring them to you, we will go back and we will review their 23 audit using the February framework, and we'll review their 22 audit using the February framework.
Perfect.
If, based on that, they would not be assigned, their performance would be such to not result in that risk level 1 determination for 24.
Right.
Then if the motion is approved, they would not come before you. They would still be assigned to probation risk level 1. They would still be required to do the submissions, but you would not be taking any action. If we do that and it doesn't change things, they would still either receive the same ratings or end up in probation risk level 1 for 24, then they will be placed on an agenda for you to consider how you want to proceed.
That was perfect. So was that easier to digest for everyone? Yes. Thank you so much. Questions? Yeah, go for it.
I have a question. So when next year, when will we stop like assessing someone and then going back and saying, well, under this framework, they would have passed? Or, when do you think this is going to stop?
It should stop with the 25 audits, because when we're assigning a probation risk level, while we're doing it with the 24 audit, for example, we're looking at 23 and 24. So for 24, 22, 23, and 24 are all in play. And so when we get to 25, it'll be 23, 24, 25 that are all in play. So 25 should be the last of this. And again, I anticipate this will only impact a very small percentage of your portfolio. Either way, whether they end up coming before you or not, this will be a small percentage of your portfolio.
Yes.
President Montier, board, quick question. So in the event the motion passes, what communication to a school regarding this? Do they have the opportunity then to take that framework, the February framework, and run their previous data through that on their own? Is there going to be communication to them to be able to do that on their own, to run their own analysis too, prior to then getting information that you ran the analysis and what the picture is? Kind of what does that communication look like to school leaders?
In the audit letter that is sent out, and that's the letter that's sent out after we review their audit and we talk about everything. We talk about where you fall financially, and we talk about if anything's been added to the operational dashboard. For those that are in particular assigned to probation risk level 1, their letter will either include information saying you will be on a subsequent agenda for the board to consider what to do, or it will reference today's motion and say, typically this would have happened, but the board made a motion on this day and this will not happen. All charter holders, regardless of whether they are assigned to probation risk level 1 or they receive a good standing rating, have access through the online system to the data that's used to create their dashboard. And all audit letters that go out reference that and show them where to find that. And so anyone can access that information, look it over, and either say, hey, I don't agree with where you came down, or use that data plus their audit and plug it in and see where they would have fallen under the prior version or the current version of the framework in prior years.
Wonderful. You answered my question. I think most importantly, that's what I wanted to make sure that all school leaders and everybody know, that you can always run your data through the framework at any time too, which is always a really good thing. But that articulated, cleared it up. So thank you.
Yeah. Andrea is actually really good at articulating that kind of stuff. So thank you so much.
And just to Board Member Jones' point, on our website, we also have available a measure calculator, so they can easily just input those amounts in to determine their performance under the new framework.
Lovely. Yes.
Thank you, President Montier. I'm sometimes in shock and awe with Andrea's magic and knowledge and depth. So thank you for all of your hard work on this. And I think serving on that financial framework was our hope and intention that this really catch those schools that were, on the downward spiral, as opposed to maybe have a one-off. So I think that this effort or this motion today, in my opinion, is trying to extend that backwards to schools that had already fallen into the probation risk based on old frameworks. And so it's my opinion that this benefits schools and also potentially removes schools that don't need intervention from the workload of board staff. So I appreciate that it was on today's agenda.
Any other questions or comments? Well, as always, thank you so much for all of the time and effort to the committee members and Andrea, to you. And with that, do we have a motion?
Hopefully I picked the right option. And I do appreciate your effort to interpret this for the board. I move that for the fiscal year 2024 and 2025 audit cycles, the board not subject to chartered oversight under Arizona Administrative Code R 75402J1. A charter holder assigned to probation risk level 1 based in part on the board's financial performance framework in place for the fiscal years 2022 and 2023 audit reviews. If the charter holder would not be assigned to probation risk level 1 under the financial performance framework approved by the board at its February 2024 meeting, and any amendments subsequently approved by the board. For a charter holder assigned to probation risk level 1 when the February 2024 framework and any amendments subsequently approved by the board is used for fiscal years 2022 and 2023, I move that the board direct staff to place the charter holder on a subsequent agenda for the board to determine the appropriate action to take under AACR 75402J1.
That was quite a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll
Second.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, Ashley.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Designee Miller,
Aye.
Miss Barr,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Miss Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Ruiz,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye. Thank you, Andrea.
President Monteith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Lovely. Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right, on to item J, new charter application for schools opening in 2026, 2027, presentation by Rachel.
President Monteith, Vice President Close, Superintendent Designee Miller, and board members. As part of the new charter application process, staff updates the new charter application and instructions each year to reflect the upcoming cycle. The proposed changes before you today are recommended to bring the application up to date with current educational trends, to better represent the board's expectations of its charters as outlined in its adopted frameworks, and to better align with how schools actually develop. The changes are based in lessons learned in recent new charter application cycles, learning staff has engaged in on a national level, and feedback from recent cohorts of technical review panel members. Statute requires that the application adopted by the board includes a detailed educational, business, and operational plan. The changes to each of these plans are proposed with the intent of better preparing applicants for the many hurdles faced in opening a new school by having applicants demonstrate that they have engaged in the essential learning and processes that national research indicates are needed for a successful launch. During the first opportunity for public comment, the board received one written comment. The public comment, the board's analysis of the comment, and the board's response to the comment, including any changes made to the materials presented today, are in the board materials before you. The February meeting and board consideration of the proposed materials allows for the second opportunity for public comment. Application due dates have been updated to reflect the new calendar year, as is done each year. In conjunction with this, the due date for submissions has been moved up a month from May to April. This will allow the board to consider applications at the November meeting instead of December, giving approved applicants more time to complete the required tasks for contract signing and opening on a reasonable timeline. The application will be released for use earlier this year so that applicants do not lose important application writing and preparation time. Several significant changes are being proposed, and these can be found in the board materials. However, I'd like to outline a few key points for you. First, the application submission is being moved from Google Drive to the ASBCS online system. Now that the system is fully functional and board staff has had time to adequately test it, we are moving the process to the system. Second, prompts related to consistency have been moved in the application instructions. They are now listed as an overarching expectation worth 2 points in each plan, which has been true for the educational plan for the past few years, and we're shifting now in the business and operational plan, rather than as prompts to address in each of the narrative sections. This will reduce the amount of time applicants spend writing, as many respond to these prompts in their materials, and will also maintain the technical review panel's focus on checking consistency throughout the application review and reading versus reading responses to those consistency prompts. Third, the instructional analysis section has been removed entirely from the application, thus reducing the amount of submissions from the applicant. This section resulted in a significant amount of repetition and was not utilized for academic compliance, monitoring, or reviews in any way after the application cycle. Fourth, the educational plan contains a new section related to serving special populations. These questions replace some of what was removed with the instructional analysis, as well as prompts that were relocated from the academic systems plan, which does remain in the application. Finally, the verified proof of secured funds component has been removed from the application as well. Funding for startup charters has changed significantly in the past few years, and this honors that change. Now applicants are asked to provide a narrative discussing current funds as well as proposed revenue sources. This will allow the applicant to discuss possible grant opportunities and for board staff to conduct due diligence related to those grants during the application cycle and prior to board consideration. In addition to the key points outlined here, questions have been streamlined, clarified, and modified throughout the application in an effort to better focus applicants on the expectations in each area. Prompts have also been moved between sections to ensure each section is more narrowly focused on a single topic and that duplication and replication are avoided throughout the application. If the board approves the proposed changes today, board staff does anticipate making additional formatting and technical changes, including adding screenshots from the online system, which is currently being finalized right now, including updating corresponding forms and templates to ensure full alignment with the approved changes and shift to the online system. All proposed changes before you today will apply to both the new charter application for traditional schools and the new charter application for applicants with an Arizona online instruction program. As stated previously, all changes can be found in the board materials through the track changes document and/or the summary chart. However, we felt it was important to highlight the major changes for you in this introduction today. I'm available for any and all questions you may have.
All right, buzzers. Everybody's crouched.
Really quickly, hopefully, we've certainly come a long way from people bringing in boxes with thick paper applications from a decade and a half ago. On that note, with the difficulties of a new website, and I remember a very long time ago when we were going to move to an online program, and it's well, obviously, didn't work so well. What's plan B if the website is experiencing difficulties?
That's an excellent question. So plan B would be to communicate to all applicants immediately. We do collect information about our applicants, and this is actually the benefit of having added the letter of intent a handful of years ago is we have that applicant information early March with a due date in April, so we can communicate with those applicants prior. We didn't used to do that, so we couldn't communicate with them because we didn't know who was going to apply. Now we have that information in advance. If that were to happen, if the system would bust or break, we would move things back to the Google Drive, and we can move that very quickly in the same way we did during COVID to do academic reviews and in the same way we did in the last two application cycles.
Okay, and would the Google Drive reflect all the new updates, or are we just saying, hey, okay, we're not going back to previous year for that one?
No, the Google Drive is super simple because we can just structure the folders and then they would input, and this is how we did it in the past years, is we had specific folders for specific items to decrease any room for error in that process. Thank you.
Yes.
President Montiel, board members, couple questions. Rachel, thank you. So in reviewing all of the revisions, so there's three things that stood out, that I have some questions and comments on. So I think overall, there is still some barrier to entry for new charters coming in because the application is complex. And I think it does create a barrier to entry. That being said, though, I do know and I do believe there is some saturation in some areas, obviously in Arizona, but there are growing areas too where new charter applicants would want to apply and look for opportunities there. So that being said, I think one of the things when I looked at the timeline and moving up the timeline, although I understand it, I think that then creates more to the barrier part than it does to the other part. So I guess my question is if the timeline is moved up and we are accepting applications through the new portal, what happens, or what's the revision process look like, or what's the opportunity for then implementation of the revision process or review process once a charter decides to apply and they then have issues, or they have things missing, or they have things that are happening? Is there going to be more of a time period for them to be able to go through that process, to be able to get the application where it needs to be, so that we're removing some more barriers? Or what is that going to look like?
Rachel, I'll take a stab at it first
Okay.
and then let you go.
Thank you.
Two things I think to note really quickly. One of the benefits of going to the online system is that there are going to be forms and fields that can automatically be included in there that are required for the applicants to have to complete. So in the past, what we would have is an administrative review, right? We would check for administrative completeness similar to an amendment request that'd be submitted to us, right? That's where we saw some barriers for folks, because we would see that an applicant would not provide all of the documentation that would be required in the application. The hope is that having it on the website now, it's going to help ensure that the applicant knows exactly what it needs to provide, and it will not let them submit unless all of those documents and forms are provided. So one, that is the hope, right? And in mentioning the timeline, our hope is that as we're actually bringing this to you earlier than it typically comes, and we're going to be putting it out for public review and allowing applicants to start working on their applications sooner than we have in past years. So we're pushing up the timeline on us so that applicants have more time with the application to get it in front of you. And then also with us pushing that time frame up, it also allows the board to consider these in November as opposed to December. So they have one more month for implementation and getting up to speed before they potentially could open that fall. So that's really the timing that changed, is more so on us when it comes to you, and then when we are putting the application out. And it is full board staff's intent that we continue to push that timeline up. Our hope is that we can actually get the applications to you in October, so that applications, once approved, have even longer to work on implementation prior to that next fall.
That makes sense. Thank you, Ashley.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Rachel. And yeah, I appreciate that, because I do think, my hope is that, the charter community and those out there looking to open new charters do feel like Arizona is still a place to come to, and still a place to, open up a new charter. So I do appreciate that. Look forward to the process. Thank you.
Other questions? I do think it's important just to circle back to what Ms. Adams said, and just make sure that we're addressing the questions and concerns that were brought up as well, since this is part of public comment. So if I wrote these down incorrectly, I apologize. I was scratching notes as quickly as I could. But the two major concerns that I understand that were brought up, besides the 20-day review, public comment, et cetera, which I think this last conversation kind of addressed the purpose behind the timeline. If it didn't completely, maybe Rachel, you could touch on that. But then the other 2 points would be the mission and vision statement, and then concerns about Arizona taking in more nationally or national charter applications as opposed to mom and pop. So those were the major points that I wrote down. If anybody else wrote something else down, please feel free to jump in. And if I missed anything, somebody let me know.
I do have a few other notes, and I'll try to hit on some of Ms. Adams' comments as well. I'll start, Rachel, and then you can go ahead and fill in too. I think one thing that is very important for all the board members and stakeholders to understand is that staff was trying to address some of those barriers, right, that we saw in our new charter application. We saw the trends happening, right? We saw the trends of who was applying, who was successful in our applications, and that's why many of these changes are being proposed. For example, the funding, right? We knew that the folks that were coming in that were able to have verified public,
Proof of
yes,
secured fund.
Thank you. I'm like, what is that? Okay, so the charter applications that were able to show that and verify that they had the funds, they were most likely one of those that came from national networks, right? That coming in that have big backers. And so we want to make sure that all of our applicants have a more of an even playing field. So we changed that requirement to allow for applicants, instead of looking at an application just based off the money that they have at that starting juncture, it also allows for them to have an application based off of potentially what are they expecting to receive once this application is approved, because we know that grants are now more accessible once the application is actually approved. So that's like one example. Another example is we saw that throughout this application process, we were asking for information that, quite frankly, the applicants were a year or 2 years ahead in actually knowing that and putting things into fruition, right? For example, the facilities. We would ask for facility documentation and examples as to where the charter was looking to actually operate and be situated. Quite frankly, it was very rare that we actually saw an applicant use one of those locations because of the length of time it takes from the application window to actually when it's opened up. And so instead of doing that, we're saying, what is your research? Explain to us what research you have looked into in your target community that you're looking to be situated in, and just looking to make sure they've done a full analysis. Again, not saying whether their analysis is correct or is incorrect, but more so, have you done the work to make sure that you fully understand the community that you are going to be serving when you are approved? So I think if I look at this, our intent is to not have those barriers where we're asking for unreasonable information at the time. We're trying to be more thoughtful in what we are asking for, so the information that we are getting is meaningful at the time of the application, and then building in processes later on that board staff can manage and say, look, okay, now that you have been approved, let's talk about facilities. Do you have the appropriate facility documentation later on after you've been approved, right? So I think that's, to me, is the main part that we are looking to bridge those barriers a little bit. In addition to that, although yes, we are members of the National Association for Charter School Authorizers, NACSA. Rachel was a part of their leadership organization and leadership initiatives to work on the new charter application. So she did go through, was it a 2-year process to talk to other authorizers throughout the country. So they would come together and they would talk about best practices. What are they seeing working? What are they seeing as barriers? What are they seeing that potentially, what is Arizona doing, right? That is really working. And took those best practices of what they were seeing and built them into this. Really what that looked at is like, we're trying to figure out capacity. We're trying to figure out the people that are in your application, are they most likely going to be successful? Do they have the knowledge? Do they understand what a standard is? Not necessarily looking at their lesson plans at this point, but more so, do you understand the basics of running a public charter school? And then where are those gaps, so that the board staff and the TRP can then further have additional conversation with the applicant throughout the process to help them identify areas where they have additional need to do more research and to learn more about Arizona. So I would say, yes, it is no secret that we are working with national folks on the work that we do, but we're hoping that that's because it brings best practice to Arizona, but true to Arizona and what we need here. And then I believe Rachel going through the vision and mission section, and then also I think just talking about too what you've seen looking at the data and why this application is so robust, and the hope that we have in making sure that our applicants are successful once they are approved.
That's my cue to talk. So I think one thing that I want to punctuate with what Ashley just mentioned around this idea of these mom and pop applications is the very beginning of the leadership cohort I was in was a data analysis. I looked at our last 7 years of applications and who's succeeding and who's not. And not only in this process, but after we approved them, where are they now? And what we learned is that the reality is, Lynn is exactly right. The big players are the ones making it through our process, and that precipitated the need for a lot of change in this application. So I think, to the point that, yes, I participated in the NACSA cohort, and yes, it's NACSA informed, but not NACSA driven. I did a lot of research on the states. There are many states in which the authorizer's charge is to approve only community-driven applications. They don't allow national ESPs to come in. And so I looked at those states' applications to see what are they asking, because their folks are getting through their process. What do we need to shift and change to be more community driven and community focused where it's appropriate? Because we also don't want to say we don't want national folks coming in. That's not our charge either, right? And so we want to level that playing field. So many of these prompts are based in what is working nationally for community driven applicants that are having success in their first 5 years. Also, lessons learned from those that have failed in their first 5 years after going through this process. What did we miss? And where can we beef up or fix or adjust or change to get at those things? And so that is where the heart of these changes is coming from and lives. Next. Vision.
Vision and mission.
Sorry, my notes are a mess. So we did shift section. It's called section A1. It has historically been the educational philosophy section. The feedback that I received from most of my applicants and TRP members as we went through the last cycle is this section tends to be quite redundant from section A3, which is the educational, the program of instruction. So what we often find is the program of instruction has a page limit, and people use the educational philosophy section to then just add a whole bunch of extra things about their program in there. And also, when you ask someone what their educational philosophy is, what we by and large are finding is they don't really I hate to say this, but don't well explain what their philosophy is. And in doing some national research on nonprofits, entrepreneurship, charter plants, etc., what we found is that in general, it's about mission, vision, and values. It's not really about the philosophy. So the section is still called educational philosophy. It still does ask for their educational philosophy. But what it's asking is, within that philosophy, what's your mission? How'd you get there? What are the values that shape and form that mission? And then what's your vision? Now, to Lynn's point, I know there's a lot of confusion around what is the difference between a mission and a vision. We have, after we receive those public comments, defined those two things. Mission being essentially, what is your goal? What are you going to do? What is your aim? Vision being, and how would you hope to change things in 5 years? What does this look like in 5 years? Whether that's for your community, for the state, for students, for education, whatever that looks like. I also want to be very clear. We're not going to evaluate them 5 years from now on whether they met their vision or not. This is purely about, have they thought through, what are you really trying to get out by planting this school? Also, in response to that public comment, I did review many charter school websites in the state of Arizona. Many of our charters do have both mission and vision statements. So this is a generally accepted practice, both nationally and locally. Many of our schools do already have mission and vision statements.
I think just to follow up on the mission and vision, the other note that I wrote was how to rank. So it sounds like it's under the educational philosophy. If you could just touch on that a little bit, please.
I think it's important here, going back to like the importance of us asking, have you thought through, right? That's really, we're not going to rate their vision to say, do we agree with it? Do we think it's robust enough? Is it going to be attainable? No, it's going to be, have you really thought through what your vision is? What is your educational philosophy, right? So I just want to make sure that that's clear. Like and that's how we've changed a lot of this. It's like, we're basically looking at, do you have it? Do you have a vision of what you're trying to accomplish rather than do we agree with your vision? So I just want to make sure that's clear.
And to that point, this specific prompt is provide the vision statement, just demonstrating what the school will achieve when delivering on its mission, explain how it was created, articulate how the educational philosophy will result in achievement of the vision. So it's really about better understanding their philosophy and where they're going.
President Montier, I have a quick question on that. So on the vision, one of the questions is how it was created. Okay. Read that to me again, if you don't mind. I'm sorry.
You're totally fine. Provide the school's vision statement demonstrating what the school will achieve when delivering on its mission. Explain how the vision was created and articulate how the school's educational philosophy will likely result in achievement of the vision.
Okay. So the TRP, when reviewing, is going to rate that based on an assumption or a notion that the creation of a vision has to do with the philosophical grounds of being in education or wanting to be a charter, or are there going to be guidelines provided and what, you know what I'm saying? Is there going to be a little more detail on? Okay, because I could see that.
To that
Be
point,
wide
I think
open.
it's really important to understand that this application and these instructions are the criteria upon which applications are evaluated. So the TRP doesn't get to add in their own overlays of, well, I don't like that vision, or I don't like how they got to that vision. It's, did they, in their response in the application, tell you what the vision is, tell you how they created it, what got them there, and articulate how, if I act upon this mission, I'll get to this vision. I think I will. And to that point also, Member Jones, it's important to note that the TRP receives significant training each year, even when we have repeat members year over year. We do train, and it'll be more comprehensive this year because of the massive changes that are happening, does receive training each year to ensure that they understand each criteria in detail and are applying them across the board equally, as well as we do have a staff member, it's generally Shannon Black, who sits in on every TRP consensus call after they've all individually rated their rubrics, who sits in and listens. And if she's hearing discrepancies amongst teams or amongst applications, she will step in and say, okay, let's pause here. Let's look at this one and this one. We have to rate these evenly. And so that is something that we do to ensure inter-rater reliability.
Thank you for answering that, and I do appreciate that. I think you're correct. I would say there are a good majority of schools in Arizona, charter, et cetera, that have a vision, mission, and even value statements or core values. But if you were to ask them how they created the vision, I think you're going to get a different, that's what I'm just saying. I want to be careful that we are, we're not, the TRP understands that, well, we're not going to give points if you said you created your vision because you were sitting, at a kitchen table with three people and you got excited and decided you want to do it, versus somebody who went through an entire stakeholder process, did an entire, that's all I'm worried about. So I just want to make sure that is clear. And thank you for answering the question. So.
Thank you, President Montier. It actually something that you said, remember, Barb, maybe like back to so many years ago with the big, gigantic boxes of paper. I feel like it's been almost as long since I've had the pleasure of listening to like passionate public comment. So I just want to thank those that made that effort today, because I think that's really important part of our process.
Any other questions, comments? I think that a lot of time and effort has been put into this on everyone's part. So just on behalf of the board, thank you everyone for putting in the time and effort, because it obviously matters and it's very important. And that's something that I think that we just need to remember when we're making our decisions. Yes. And with that, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. Make a few comments first, though. I'm going to call out Lynn Adams and just say thank you. Appreciate the time you took and the thought you gave to your comments, both spoken and written. I think you take up the whole appendix A. So I know the staff has reviewed your comments and incorporated as best they could. But I would also like to remind the board, and you all know this, so this is really just for the record, that as this is related to new charter applications, while the staff does a significant amount of carrying the load and providing great support, the ultimate approval comes from the board. So you always have that right, in reviewing every applicant and every application in processing it yourself and coming to a conclusion on behalf of the state, really, through you. So, but having said that, and I appreciate all the work that everyone has done and all the comments that everyone has made. I move that the board adopt the revisions to the new charter application for the 2025 application cycle for charters opening in FY 2027 and beyond as presented to the board today and found in the materials for today's board meeting, and direct staff to make necessary technical or formatting changes to documentation necessary for clarity, consistency, or readability.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Designee Miller.
I'd like to explain my vote, make a couple of comments. First, I just really want to thank the board staff. It's obvious how much time, thought, it's, I'm sure, very complicated emotionally, professionally, to have these interactions with the applicants, right? Like they've put so much time and effort into the process, and wanting them to be successful, but also realistic is truly a very delicate balance. And it's obvious that a lot of thought has gone into that, a lot of good intention. I think that those most impacted by this conversation, frankly, wouldn't even note a public comment, right? Like it's a future vision, potentially in their heart or their soul. And I think everybody knows I'm not a huge fan of bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake, or like creating barriers. So I think, like, honestly, just for myself, I haven't, Rachel, you said it was massive changes. I don't feel like I've had the time to review them to feel really confident in a yes vote. So today I'm a no.
Ms. Barr,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Ruiz,
Aye.
Mr. Swanson,
Aye.
President Montiers.
I would just like to reiterate, thank you, everybody, very, very much. And my vote is aye.
With that, motion passes.
Okay. And item J, summary of current events, future meeting dates, and items for future agendas.
Board members, at this time, I have nothing to report other than our next board meeting is on March 4th.
And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.